what that means. Ahad is one, Am is people, one of the people. One of the people, that was his name, Ahad Am. I think he's at that Zionist Congress too, where Herzl is rejected, or at least he inspires people like Weitzman to think the way they think. Ahad Am was not a political Zionist. They didn't believe in a state. They wanted a Jewish cultural center, again, where the mission of the Jews to the nations could be restored, all of this idealistic, what some of these thinkers have been calling self-delusion. That's a noble idea, of course, where Jewish culture could be cultivated and so on, but not in an independent fashion and not a state. And their form of Zionism, which was popular among some, and still is popular among intellectuals, was called cultural Zionism. In fact, the writer of this book, the compiler of this essay, who died this year, of this group of essays, who died this year, actually, his name is Hertzberg. He was a conservative reformed rabbi in Teaneck, New Jersey, or someplace like that. But he actually went to Columbia University. He just got himself did rabbinical training after that and got what's called a pulpit, like in Christianity. Got a pulpit out in New Jersey someplace, and then but he's, if you read his introduction, he's totally committed cultural Zionist. That's his whole outlook. He's a cultural Zionist. An example, you hear a little contempt in my voice. I'm not trying to be contemptuous. I just don't think that's going to solve the problem of the Holocaust and other things like that. In other words, we have the benefit of hindsight in history with us here. Herzl is trying to solve the Jewish question. These other people are acting like they've got years and years, hundreds of years before them to solve the Jewish problem, as it were. There's no time set in their activities. Pinsker is aware that its situation is catastrophic, has to some extent before him, but these other ones, the cultural Zionists, don't have any awareness. They're so involved in their own intellectual processes that they just want to make sure it's done correctly, intellectually correctly, on a high intellectual, cultural plane, but they don't really identify with the plight of millions and millions of people who are caught in the middle of all these things. And they're not out to save those people. And when Weitzman makes fun of Herzl, you see, Weitzman's a big hero of the Jewish people. You speak to Jews and say, oh, Chaim Weitzman, they think, oh, it's like talking about Martin Luther King. They think he's marvelous. Ever spoken to fellow Jews or Jews you meet about Chaim Weitzman? This is a wonderful person, but if you read what Chaim Weitzman is talking about here, he's in no rush. He rejects Herzl because he said Herzl isn't Jewish enough. His methods are too non-Jewish. He wants to use modern methods. We can't use modern methods. We have to use Jewish methods, which means means not get it done. But it's very funny to read Weitzman, and he really resents Herzl, and it's really sad. You know, it's just like you see today in Israel. The present prime minister, who used to be a part of the right-wing conservative party, you know, hates the other people in the party. Like, if you ever heard of Netanyahu? Netanyahu was a guy who was brought up in America, but he was born in Israel. He went back and, you know, was in the army there. And his brother was the leader of the Entebbe raid. Jonathan Netanyahu was killed in the Entebbe raid and so on. And their father was a tremendous intellectual. I met him at Cornell University. He's still alive. He wrote a lot of books on the Inquisition in Spain. He was a professor at Cornell University. I went to school in Cornell, but when he interviewed me for a post at Cornell, he rejected me. He thought that, I guess he thought I wasn't, quote, Jewish enough or something like that. But the point was, I don't hold it against him necessarily. I think he was stupid to do that. But the point is that he interviewed me for a post back in Jerusalem when I was living there and finishing my doctorate from Columbia in the early 1970s. But the point I'm trying to make is the father was a secretary of this fellow called Jabotinsky. And we'll read about Jabotinsky is really the heir to Herzl. But he's portrayed as a madman, fanatic, lunatic, and he's not. He's totally rational. He's a Greek classical scholar. He's totally rational. And this Netanyahu was his secretary. He too died tragically, Jabotinsky, in 1940 before World War II, and so he couldn't bring to bear his approach. But people like Weitzman, Ahad, all of those people, they hated people like Herzl and Jabotinsky. They hated them. Their names were like a curse. So this Ehud Omer, he hates people like Netanyahu, the son of this man. And he'll do anything to stop him from, and he's now the most popular political leader in Israel, good or bad, I can't judge, but he'll do anything to stop him from getting power. So what he's done is made an alliance in Israel with the right-wing, almost fascist party, led by a fellow named Lieberman, who represents the Russian immigrants. And he's brought him into the government, anything to, knowing that Netanyahu is popular, anything to circumvent Netanyahu getting into a position of power. Well, that's what happens in these situations. People's personal jealousies of each other and rivalries with each other often sort of overwhelms their sense of reason. And that's what happens with Herzl and Weitzman and Ahad and people in this argument. Weitzman revels in destroying Herzl, and he does destroy him. Herzl dies the next year. And yet Herzl is the one who is possessed by the vision that if we don't do it now, a disaster of immeasurable proportions is in store for us. And Weitzman is not able to see it, cannot understand it, doesn't see it. Let me just say two more things before you go. Look at how he starts here. The idea which I have developed in this pamphlet is an ancient one, the restoration of the Jewish state. The world resounds with the clamor against the Jews. This has revived the dominant idea. I claim no new discoveries. He understands that. It's just an attempt to resolve the Jewish question. I must first of all defend my sketch from being called utopian, and so on. You know, he's very intellectual. But as you go down that page, the decisive factor at the bottom is our propelling force. And what is that force? The plight of the Jews. So he knows that the propelling factor is the situation of the Jews as he sees it, and it must happen soon. It cannot be delayed. And that is why he's so possessed. He has a vision. He sees and knows a terrible tragedy. He's watched the Dreyfus Affair. You see, he's been to the West. People like these other people that we're talking about have never been to the West. They don't know the Western world. So this vision that he's possessed with is brought about by this horrendous situation that he sees developing around the Jews in Europe. And he's possessed by this. There was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was, so I'll just let you guys go. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Read Herzl. Nordau, Herzl's friend, you can read him. Read Brandeis, we're not going to all do this next time. Read Weitzman and read Ahad. That's what we're going to do for the rest of this class. Oh, a roll sheet, I have a roll sheet. I have a roll sheet. Put a date on there. Put a date on there and cross your name on. Do you want to cross your name on? No. Yeah, but go ahead. That's not my pen. This doesn't work. Here.
2 or 3 hours a day.
There was something else I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was. Oh. Okay, what you got there for me? Yeah, I really appreciate all your